Marcia Kavanaugh, thanks so much for joining us. Well, next week, the state legislature will get a vacation between the end of the annual regular session and the start of a special session for a half hour. We'll look tonight at the coming of what will be the year's third session as the governor and lawmakers try to fix a fiscal breakdown. We'll also examine new developments in the Will Smith case, as well as how the area ranks with attracting millennials and the latest in the fall Senate elections. Our Future Watch segment examines the status of the new VA hospital. And feeling the pulse for us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Jeremy Alford, publisher, LaPolitics.com. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter. And Travers Mackel, reporter, WDSU-TV, Channel 6. First over to Jeremy, and legislature just keeps on meeting, and they're going to continue meeting through the rest of the month. What are they doing?
Well, it's like staring down a rabbit hole. I'm fresh from Baton Rouge. Today was actually a pretty big day in the legislature. It came down to the Senate's changes on the budget, which this entire session is about. And the House voted to send it into a conference committee. And, this is a special kind of process that you usually don't see the inner workings of. But what's going to happen now is that this weekend, you'll see a couple of representatives from the House, a couple of representatives from the Senate are going to get together, try to hammer out some compromises, and then present a report back to the House and Senate and see if they can all agree on it. And right now, the goal, according to Appropriations Chair Cameron Henry, is to get that report out by Sunday evening. Now, lawmakers have got to pass a budget by 6 p.m. Right. On Monday evening. And I think the governor wisely put the budget in the special session call just in case lawmakers couldn't come to a conclusion. But it sounds like they're going to work something out. And really, right now, it all comes down to TOPS, and it comes down to the safety net hospitals. The Senate sent the House a budget that had funded only half of what was needed to fully fund TOPS, about $150 million. They wanted $300. The House, meanwhile, had funded TOPS at about 75%. They fully funded the safety net hospitals, but the Senate sent the bill back with the safety net hospitals short about $100 million. And this is important. This all sets the table for the special session that starts at 6:30 on Monday evening, because if TOPS has an adequate amount of funding that Republicans can live with, and the same thing with the safety net hospitals, they will have no incentive whatsoever to vote for revenue-raising measures in the special session. So the governor wanted the Senate's budget. I mean, you actually saw the governor's staff on the House floor today pushing members, freshman representatives, trying to get them to concur with the Senate's changes that would send the bill directly to him. But it looks like there's a compromise that was worked out, and so they sent the bill into a conference committee process. And look, it's called a committee, but sometimes there are never any meetings held. Usually it's hammered out by just a couple of people, and then they have to run around with the document, and they have to get all the members to sign it. Then the reports go out. But it looks like the next action on the budget is going to be on Sunday.
We were listening to one legislator in the House asking the Speaker, are we going to have a repeat of what we did for the special session at the very end, where bills were just flying? Oh,
yeah. I mean, as we've discussed on the show before, that first special session, I mean, I've read Greek tragedies that had better endings in that special session. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to repeat that. So this upcoming special session is a little more streamlined. There are going to be fewer hands trying to guide this thing for the governor. Representative Gene Reynolds, who is the chairman of the Democratic caucus, is kind of a point man on the floor. He's been getting folks together to file the bills that are needed for the special session. And look, we've heard all along that the budget shortfall is $600 million. I find it hard to believe that $600 million will be raised in this upcoming special session. The Senate is saying that it's closer to $450. You go talk to folks in the House, they're getting comfortable around $300 million or so. So the big debate in the special session may not be what do we pass to raise money, but rather where do we put these limited dollars? Mm-hmm. And something else that came out today is that House Speaker Taylor Barra has come up with a plan that he says will redirect $74 million in the budget from self-generated revenue from different departments and agencies. He's going to propose a resolution that would direct the treasurer to do that inside the next fiscal year budget. But right now, we don't know what the Senate thinks about that plan, what the governor thinks about that plan. Mm-hmm. But to be able to find $74 million is a great legislative tradition, especially at the last minute. And it'll be interesting to see if they'll be able to plug that money in, because that would go a long way to resolving TOPS and the problems with the hospitals.
Jeremy, by the time this third session is over, they'll have been meeting almost continuously for 6 months.
Right.
For what is you run for as a part-time position. What sort of toll is this taking on the legislators?
I mean, look, morale is low. It all started on January 11th with a very contentious speaker's election. That rolled right into a very contentious special session. Then we went into the regular session, and here we are now, kind of, staring down the rabbit hole, wondering when this is all going to end. So I think that folks lawmakers have complained that they're falling behind on their day jobs. That they're for lawyers, their law clients are getting antsy. Some people have actual employers they have to go back to. The Representative Chris Broadwater from Hammond was telling me that his daughters very playfully were complaining that they haven't been able to practice softball with him because he's in Baton Rouge there in Hammond. So he had his wife bring him up yesterday, and he walked right off the floor during debate and missed a bunch of votes, but played softball in the front of the state capitol in front of Huey Long's grave while everybody else was voting. I think it's taking a toll on a lot of folks, and it's
come June 23rd, right? That's the
June
end?
20. Interesting thing is June 23rd at midnight, and I had a longtime lawyer tell me that they're going to end the session at 12 a.m. where a bunch of lawmakers are going to probably be at .08. There's usually some imbibing on the final day of session.
So, but you said that the call is more defined. The budget is a part of the call that the governor made for the special session,
Just
and
in
then
case it
a
doesn't
couple of
pass,
other
but
things that will be visited too, like that sales tax. There were some problems with the sales tax. that was passed.
There's some unintended consequences from the first special session where some folks lost their exemptions, like the Saints and the Girl Scouts. So they're going to fix some of those. But I talked to the Revenue Department this week, and they said that they're still on the hook to pay those taxes between April 1st and whatever the effective date of the fix is. But the House is the battleground. It's they don't have a huge appetite for individual income tax changes. The governor's pushing that in a major way, but there's going to be some House bills you can expect to pass. There's a $135 million change to a premium insurance tax for health plans that needs 70 votes. That will likely pass. They're talking about not paying debt on tax refunds to businesses for 90 days. That would raise $20 million. And then they're looking at Walt Legay's bill from the last session that would kind of tinker with the itemized deductions that could raise another 120 or so.
Okay, all right. We'll continue talking taxes. All right, thanks a lot, Jeremy. Over to Travers now. And today there was a hearing in the Will Smith case, and a lot came out of it today.
There was. It's been a busy week in the Will Smith case. We heard earlier this week that Will Smith's blood alcohol level was 0.24, almost 3 times the legal limit. That was a big deal for the defense because they were trying to paint Will Smith as somebody who was out of control and that Cardell Hayes had to act in self-defense. But then you had today's hearing, and it was not a good day for the defense of Cardell Hayes. They basically went 0 for 3. They wanted motions to suppress statements made by officers at the scene that Cardell Hayes made to officers at the scene and that he made in an interrogation room. They also wanted a bond reduction. They didn't get either one of those things as well. It was not a good day. The biggest thing that happened today for the defense was Cardell Hayes, in audio tapes that they played in an interrogation room, admits that he got out of the vehicle after he bumped Will Smith with a handgun in his hand. And most legal analysts and legal observers today were shocked by that because they feel like it's going to be very difficult to build a self-defense claim when someone gets out of a vehicle with a gun in hand. As somebody told me, even if Will Smith and his camp were angry, were enraged, and were yelling and screaming, it's tough to make a defense and say, well, you had a gun in your hand, you shot him. So it's a tough.
Especially 7 times in the back.
Right. And Will Smith, Cardell Hayes said that, you can hear him in the audio tape saying that Will Smith indicated he was going to his vehicle to get his gun when he saw Cardell Hayes' gun. But as a lot of people in the courtroom felt, even if that's true, and nobody knows if it is, even if Will Smith was going for a gun, Cardell Hayes exited the vehicle with a gun in his hand.
And so there was testimony today from an off-duty police officer who was one of the first, if not the first, on the scene and made the 911 call.
Right.
And what was heard on that tape?
Chris McCaw, he was on a date at the Half Moon, which is about a block away. He heard the wreck. He went outside. He heard gunshots. So he took cover, and he actually called 911. And you could hear him talking to Cardell Hayes. And Cardell Hayes basically says, this may not be exact verbatim, but he goes, yeah, I got out the car with my gun. He hit me a ways back. And then he said he indicated to me he was going, he being Will Smith, was going to get his gun. So Cardell Hayes, there's no doubt, shot. It's always been claimed self-defense. His defense team is still going to make that claim, but it's just really tough to prove when the suspect in this case got out the vehicle with a gun. It wasn't like, oh, we got out, we exchanged words, and then went back. We both went for our guns, and I just got to mine first, which has kind of been the picture that's been painted so far.
Yeah.
But that's not really the case. And this is not a defense lawyer saying this. This is Cardell Hayes on audio and videotapes saying that.
No, Cardell Hayes also said that there was a group of people around him yelling at him, and that he was struck a few times by
He
Will
says
Smith.
that Will Smith struck him 3 times on the head. A police officer testified in the hearing on Friday that he saw no visible wounds on Cardell Hayes, and that he would believe that given the size of Will Smith, I think it's 6'3", 290, he's a former football player, that you would see some kind of wound. A big deal today, too, is that a trial date's set, September 20th, which is fast. I mean, the judge in this case, Camille Burris, even pointed out that's pretty fast. It's 5.5 months for a homicide, which is almost unheard of, especially in Orleans Parish, where sometimes homicide cases take a long time before they get to trial. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because you have good lawyers and lawyers that are familiar with the landscape down there. John Fuller and Jay Daniels have done a good job defending clients, and then Leon Canizaro has his 2 top dogs on it, if you will, Jason Napoli and his daughter, Laura Canizaro-Roderick. These attorneys have tried cases against each other in that courthouse, and it's going to be interesting to see because John Fuller does not seem to be backing off the stance that this was a self-defense and that I plan to prove it in court. He didn't really want to show much of his hand today during the bond reduction and motion hearing, but it wasn't a good day for them with some of the things that came out.
What was the mood like in the courtroom?
It was a packed courtroom. A lot of people from Cardell Hayes' camp are in there. The only people from the Will Smith side are the Smith family attorney, Peter Thompson from a law firm in New Orleans, Billy Ceravolo, the police officer who was kind of quasi-involved in this, his attorney, and then some courtroom watchers. It's a packed house, though, with family and friends of Cardell Hayes, including bounce artist Big Frida. He was there. That artist is apparently a friend of Cardell Hayes, so it's a packed courtroom. A lot of people seem to be interested in to see how this will play out. I think a lot of his family was hoping the bond would be reduced. $1.75 million is high for a second-degree murder case. Not unheard of, but high. I think they were hoping that it would get reduced substantially. It didn't get reduced at all.
Why not?
She didn't give a reason. She just said she's not moving forward with it. She also denied a motion. The defense wanted a police report handed over earlier this week that had a lot of redactions in it. She said that the police don't have to redact that.
The defense also requested the Raquel Smith's medical records.
They did. A lot was happening. They requested Raquel Smith's medical records from UMC. We don't know the reason why. They didn't say. It is assumed by a lot of people in the legal community that given the fact that Will Smith's blood alcohol level was 0.24, 3 times the legal limit, they want to see what his wife's blood alcohol level was because she is going to be, if not a witness, the star witness in this thing to tell what happened. So the judge did say that the defense can have her records. They have to redact any information that's not pertinent to this case, but obviously blood alcohol will be pertinent to this case.
So no bond reduction, Mr. Hayes remains jailed.
He remains jailed, September 20th trial date, and like I said, it was a good day earlier this week for the defense, bad day today, and this is going to continue to play out for the next 4 months before we get to trial.
All right, Travers, thanks a lot. Over to Dawn now. Future Watch segment and the VA hospital on Tulane, between Tulane and Canal. When is it going to open?
It's supposed to see first patients finally in 2017. Actually, not in 2017. Be fully open in 2017. First patients in December. And those patients would be seeing primary care physicians, seeing mental health experts, your general kind of office visit type stuff. And then it will graduate from there to outpatient surgery to inpatient surgery. But the first patients seen in December, all of the buildings minus, Errol loves to talk about, minus the Dixie Brewery building, which will be their research building, should be turned over from the contractors to the VA to furnish and get ready by September. The Dixie Brewery building is going to be the research building. It's taking longer than expected because it was a historical preservation, renovation, rework, and that detail work is taking longer. They also found some things in the excavation process that had to be mitigated, one of which was a big oil tanker underneath, so they had to get the hazardous materials out. That has been the status of this hospital construction the whole time. It took a long time. There were governmental delays in Washington that delayed getting the land down here. Then there were unanticipated site cleanup delays. This hospital facility was originally scheduled to open before University Medical Center. Now we're looking at a full opening as I said, in 2017. What they're in the process of doing right now, though, buying and installing 28,000 pieces of furniture, buying and installing 40,000 pieces of equipment, medical, non-medical, and IT equipment. So it is a big job. It's a lot of buildings and 2,000 parking spaces. The weather, I did ask, with all the rain we've had, that has not been a significant problem. All of the structures are enclosed and all the work is happening inside. It's a complete construction site, though, still. I drove around it yesterday. Construction fences everywhere, not looking real pretty. The new UMC, kind of polar opposite to it. One of the other big things they're working on doing now, too, is hiring. And the goal really is to not compete against University Medical Center, but to work in conjunction and have doctors, not just patients who can go back and forth between two facilities, but also staff and doctors and experts who can see people through the VA system and also through the UMC system, and be a true training hospital with medical students. So it's getting there, but it's
getting there. I mean,
it's like the little engine that could.
Is it going to meet this December date to begin seeing?
Come hell or high water, it looks like it's going to, at least because they already have control of that outpatient center building and the inpatient center building. They're ramping them up. It might still not be beautiful on the perimeter, but it will be ready to see patients and be functional. And it will be the first time in 10 years that the veterans from Texas to the Florida border have a full-scale facility to come to. Okay. And there are more and more of those veterans coming off of Afghanistan, Iraq.
All right, all righty, Dawn. Thanks a lot. Back over to Jeremy now for just a quick update on what it's looking like for our congressional races this fall.
I think a really interesting one that's starting to gear up is the 2nd congressional district. I think a few months ago, no one was expecting Cedric Richmond to have a known challenger, but he has one in Baton Rouge Mayor Kip Holden. But it's certainly been a very good week, the past 7 days, to be the incumbent in the 2nd district. It started over the weekend where the state Democratic Party officially endorsed Cedric Richmond. Then on Wednesday, Louis Wren, the president of AFL-CIO Louisiana, told a breakfast group here, a labor group, that his organization has decided to endorse Cedric Richmond. And I spoke to someone who's in kind of the upper reaches of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in D.C., and they told me in no uncertain terms that should Cedric Richmond ever look vulnerable at all in this race, that they're ready to come down to Louisiana with resources and spend on his behalf. So he looks like he's in a pretty good position to go into the cycle. And I think you can tell just from those words from those three groups, those decisions, that Cedric Richmond is going to take this race very seriously, and he's going to run it hard.
Any response from the Holden camp on this?
No, not yet. It's that even when he ran for lieutenant governor last year, Mayor Holden had a tough time fundraising. He had a tough time having any kind of real operational structure, fundraising base. So that's certainly more of a challenge to run statewide, but he's going to have to be more organized. He's going to do a little bit better on fundraising to run against someone like Cedric Richmond.
Isn't it interesting that he's running? Because, for so long that was a New Orleans district. It was Bill Jefferson's district. It was Joseph Gau's. And it barely, I know it's an unusual if you look at it on a map, but it just seems like the bulk of the people may not even know who Kip Holden is in this district, because it's probably 90% a greater New Orleans district. So, he would almost have to campaign solely in New Orleans to challenge Cedric Richmond.
Right. And, that district was redrawn to create a majority black district, so it runs through the river parishes and up to a portion of East Baton Rouge. And I think the mayor's strategy is to run strong in his home base and to pick up all the little parishes in between, and somehow, I'm sure they're hopeful that another candidate in New Orleans might surface to eat into Cedric Richmond's base, but it's. I'm not sure that's the most politically astute way to go about taking out an incumbent congressman.
And what about the Senate race?
Right, the Senate race continues to get interesting as well. We saw a poll this week from Southern Media Opinion Research that was paid for by Lane Grigsby, a retired CEO of Cajun Baton Rouge. He's a big donor to a lot of conservative candidates. But it showed John Kennedy with a commanding lead still. The treasurer even seems to be benefiting from this budget fiasco because folks tend to like his messaging more than John Bell Edwards. At least that's what the poll shows. And then there's really kind of a slugfest kind of shaping up for that other runoff spot. Charles Bustani and Public Service Commissioner Foster Campbell, one of the Democrats, kind of running neck and neck. And then Congressman John Fleming is bringing up the rear among those three. But this week we're starting to see Congressman Fleming from Shreveport attacked Congressman Boustany from Lafayette. That, he put out a press release calling John Fleming calling Charles Boustany Obama's Bayou buddy. So I think that may be a term that we hear a little bit more of moving forward. Josh Pellerin, of Acadiana, an oil executive. He's a third Democrat in addition to Attorney Carolyn Fayard, who's from Denham Springs and also works in New Orleans. But Joshua Pellerin has put out a new web video introducing himself to voters. So it's starting to shape up. There's certainly still a lot of ground to play. And with such a large field, I think everyone realizes that it's very important right now to have the money in place and have your organization in place and be ready to hit it hard at the last minute.
For all the people that have been using I think what David Vitter pioneered at the Obama bashing strategy, that strategy doesn't have much time left now. I mean,
yeah, the clock's really ticking on it. I mean, it kind of started to fall apart last election cycle. But when you have two congressmen running in the same field, I think both of them are looking for ways, especially Congressman Fleming, are looking for ways to distinguish their votes, and it's a bad thing right now to be part of any part of establishment, whether it be the House leadership or the White House. So everyone's trying to make everyone else look like they're playing ball with both sides up in D.C.
And we talked about this in November when David Vitter lost and announced he wasn't running. He said, Jeremy goes, there are going to be lots of people in this room that are going to run for this seat because John Kennedy, Fleming, and Boustany were all there at David Vitter's headquarters, and now those are three of the four
they were
front
all,
runners.
I think all three were hoping to be appointed should David Vitter win governor.
So we'll probably begin hearing a lot more about this as the summer moves on, I would guess, as we get closer to Labor Day again.
Once we get through the session, we can turn to the other politics of the year.
Okay, always politics. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Okay, Errol, over to you. Millennials, where are they wanting to move?
One thing people need to remember about politics this summer is it's going to be a mental interruption. That's going to be the Olympics. And even the presidential election is going to be pushed on the side for a few weeks, and then it's going to build up again. But it's a website called Realty.com that released a whole series of studies about, it's about real estate and where people are moving, and there was one about where millennials are moving to. Millennials who were described as 25 to 34 years old. And it sort of parallels a study that came out last year by Forbes magazine that was showing where recent college graduates were heading, and they were all heading to the south. The one last year, just about, I mean, the basis was going to Texas, but
we can see the list up there.
Yeah, but if you look at this particular study, and you also have the median home income. And you see that New Orleans is number 7, and so and you can see in New Orleans that you're having a good growth in that particular population. The study is based on census data from 2009 to 2013, plus other studies about migration and where people are moving. At the same time, Louisiana is sort of on the edge in terms of like losing population in some studies, and so if it wouldn't be for the millennials, we'd probably have a much higher negative. One thing I think that's kind of curious, if you look at the numbers 6, 7, and 8, Oklahoma City, New Orleans, and Charlotte, one thing they all have in common is a basketball team. The Hornets began in Charlotte. They were the Charlotte Hornets. Then they moved to New Orleans, and then when Katrina came, it's a desperation thing. David Stern, the commissioner, put him in Oklahoma City. And people laughed. I mean, like, Oklahoma City? I mean, what's Oklahoma City? And they really proved themselves as an NBA team, and then ultimately got the Seattle franchise, and they're doing very well with that. And I think that made them a big league franchise. And I'm kind of curious, if you look at the symbols that Realty.com had for every city, the city they have for Oklahoma City is the basketball team's logo, the Thunder. And so I think that move during Katrina with the basketball team going to Oklahoma really did a lot for the city and really made it, put it in the national spotlight. And so as you see, the millennial movement is doing well. Where people are not going, where they're moving away from, is the Midwest, the upper Midwest, and the East Coast. And the migration is here, and I think the weather is a factor. The
warmer climates.
The amenities, all the kind of amenities that you could only get in terms of professional sports and entertainment that you used to only be able to get in the bigger cities. You can get throughout the South now.
Well, we welcome the newcomers. Hope they're enjoying their life here. Thanks a lot, Errol. Jeremy, quick over to you. Medicaid, you can sign up now for it. Medicaid expansion.
Right. The governor kicked it off in New Orleans this week. They think there is about 375,000 Louisianans that they can get enrolled into this part of the expanded Medicaid program. 175 have already been added to the rolls through using food stamp rolls. So they're moving toward that, and to be eligible for it, you have to have an income that's below 138% of the poverty level. For a family of 4, that's $33,500. For a single resident, that's $16,400. And you can enroll right now. It's healthy.la.com. And I think the most surprising thing about this from a political perspective is, just a couple of years ago, there was a huge outcry of opposition to this. Now there's barely any. I think since this has started, I've only seen outreach from Americans for Prosperity, who are complaining that other states, they exceeded their maximum enrollment by like 70% on average. I don't know where that data came from, but that's what they're putting out. But aside from that, there's not a whole lot of outcry.
So sign up is now, and also through food stamps too. I think that's going to be unique to Louisiana. I don't think anybody else
I believe so, yes.
is doing that right now. Okay, Jeremy, thanks.
How far we've come from a few years ago with Bobby Jindal just rejecting everything, and now this.
Yeah.
Yep, different day. Okay,
Yeah.
time to look ahead. Yeah.
UNO has announced that they're going to combine 3 of their departments, liberal arts and education and the Department of Human Development, into a department called the Department of Liberal Arts, Education, and Human Development. And that's going to happen in July, and they're trying to assure people who are a little bit skittish about anything that happens at UNO that this will be for the better, and that you have better combined services and better facilities for students. So we'll see, but it's going to be a major movement.
It is. Okay, thanks, Errol. Jeremy.
Second special session starts at 6:30 on Monday evening, but the governor will not give his speech to the joint address until Tuesday at 10 a.m. I can't wait to hear what he's got to say, because the sentiment at the legislature is like a bunch of kids being forced to stay after school for doing something wrong. So I'm excited to see what he's going to have to say about that.
So why not until the next morning? Why isn't he doing it right after the regular session?
It's going to be 6:30 at night when they start the session. They're going to read through all the bills, read the bills into the journal, and just do a lot of housekeeping work. And I think by the time they get finished with that, get that out of the way, it would be too late for the media coverage and everything else.
So Tuesday morning, the governor addresses.
Tuesday morning, 10 a.m.
Okay, good. Don.
It's a little ways off, but the biggest visual change at the VA, an American flag and POW MIA flag will be raised in a small ceremony on July 4th, and after that, they will be offering tours of the inpatient and outpatient towers.
Okay, thanks, Don. Travers.
This Monday, this week, is the big sheriff's hearing. Will he remain in charge of the jail, or will it go into receivership? Obviously, he's set to testify, so we're going to cover that all week, because it's a big debate going on between the Orleans Parish Sheriff and the Department of Justice.
That's in federal court. Should be an interesting time.
Should be.
All right. Thanks, guys, for being here. Thank you all for joining us. Of course, we want to see you again next week from Informed Sources. Have a good evening.